Adriaan de Jongh and his game Hidden Folks. Please give him a welcome.
Hello, hello, hello. How are you? Are you good? It's a little bit, everyone's getting a little bit tired, right? Like everyone's been partying and, oh man, you know, waking up at like 10, it's so early, seeing dancers talk, you know, it's pretty rough. So I want to do things slightly different than usual. In that I do not have any presentation slides. And instead, today I will be opening up Unity. I will be showing you the emails I've been sending. I will show you Slack. I will show you Trello. I will show you sales data and platform interfaces. All the stuff that I've been doing for Hidden Folks. I want it to be very practical and specific and hopefully also useful to you, not to inspire you, but to actually like give you practical things you can do something with. So really, like today is one of those days where you have to like steal all my tricks. Yes, it does say GDS links and shit. However, I thought that was funny, and then I only added one thing. Okay, so it's also going to be very casual, maybe sort of like slowly paced, but raw and honest. And there's also a good reason that usually people do have slides and don't like show their email and stuff. And that is, very simply put, I might be giving away a lot of like sensitive data on me. Like you'll be able to see my emails and shit and like look at numbers, like sales data. So that is not like something I will be like, oh yeah, here's my life, just, you know. Please be respectful of this. Please, in your mind, sign a friend-DA, you know, NDA for friends, friend-DA. Please sign it in your mind so that everything I share here today is gonna remain in this room. Okay, are we clear on this? Okay, good. Okay, let me see, because I do have some notes. I do want to be, you know, a little bit on a rail here. Okay, so a little bit about me. I am Adriaan de Jongh. I'm a game designer. I used to have a studio called Game Oven, with which we made a bunch of games. One of them being a mobile dancing game. Two people, they grab the same phone, and the phone tells them how to dance together, and so they do like all these crazy moves. One of them was Fingle, which was awkward finger rubbing game. Do you guys know this game with the mat, the twister on the floor? So imagine that with your fingers. And so I made people like sort of like finger fuck each other. It's horrible. So I had the studio like this, but then after making 7 games, the other founder and I, we were sort of like done with working with each other. You know, after 7 games, it's okay to split up. And so then what happened was that I met a guy called Sylvain de Groeg at his graduation expo in Amsterdam. And this is the reason I had that folder here, because there's this link which takes you to this page, which should pop up an image of an exposition that he had. And so Sylvain de Groeg is also a product designer, but he's also an illustrator. And his exposition was actually entirely about those glass globes you see there. However, I thought those were boring. And I looked at the illustrations behind them, and I was super fascinated. Because what you were seeing on those illustrations were like these tiny miniature worlds. Hey, why does it go back here? And these miniature worlds I thought were extremely fascinating. They were very dense. There were lots of little people doing little things, and yeah, it was just really fascinating to me. Let's just go to one of his illustrations, because like the first time I saw this, I was like, what is this? What is happening here? So you see, like these kinds of illustrations, and it really like blew my mind, like, whoa, there's so much happening here. So I saw this guy, I saw him standing there, and I jokingly told him, oh man, your art, I was serious about loving his art style, but I jokingly said to him, hey man, we should make a game together. And then we like exchanged business cards, and I just kept thinking about it after, you know, getting home and I kept thinking about it, and maybe like after a week of thinking about it, I went to his website and I stole a bunch of his art from his website, and I made a shitty prototype using what was it? Using some characters that he put in there, some buildings, and I think I have a screenshot somewhere of the very first version, the very first screenshot of the game, very first version of the game. It looked like this. Doesn't look as good as his illustrations, but the whole point of this prototype was to sort of like get an idea of how his illustrations would look on a phone. And I added a little interface, and there was like one character that was hiding, and this was like randomly generated, and you could replay this little prototype. And so after a week, and I probably spent maybe 1 day on this, right? I showed it to him. I asked for a meeting. I showed it to him. And he looked at this and he was like, yeah, I can see this happening. And so that was sort of like the start. And from that moment on, we sort of went on this journey of making Hidden Folks together. It took 3 years, which is a long time to make a game. And yeah, I just want to show you the sort of like the steps that we took and how we actually did things, and how the tools look, and all that kind of fun, cool stuff. All right. So I want to show you the kind of crazy stuff that Sylvain does for the game now. Because as you saw, Sylvain is a great illustrator. He was definitely the inspiration for this game. And I tried to teach him how to implement his art into the game. So what he does is he makes these sprite sheets, as you can see here. Like, he makes all these building blocks, thousands of them. And I kid you not, there's, I think, maybe 4,000 or 5,000 objects by now. These massive sprite sheets, some of them small, some of them large, with hundreds of objects. And he places them manually by hand. So he draws them first, he scans them in, he places them manually in Photoshop, in this giant image, and he puts them together. Then he throws them into Unity. This is all stuff that we sort of like discovered while making the game, and on which we had to iterate 1,000 times. He throws them in Unity, he puts them here. You know, he sets all the import settings right, and then he goes into the sprite editor and like he drags all the rectangles over things, and he also names everything, and he puts the pivot points at the right places. Look, this pivot point is right here. And the reason for that is if you tap this door, we want it to open, and then it would have to have this exact same position. Anyway, there's like lots of work in this, and as you can see, it also has a name here. So all that happens. Then, and only then, we are able to put together the scenes. And because Hidden Folks is such a, sort of custom-made game, there's barely any prefabs in it. Actually, the only prefabs in here are the characters. But everything else is sort of like hand-picked, hand-put. All the colliders are manually added. Every interaction in the game is manually added. Every sound is manually added. Every object is not just added, but also sorted, because you can have objects in front and behind, and it's a 2D drawing. So for everything we place, we have to like put something in front or behind. As you can imagine, that is a lot of work. So Sylvain really like puts these scenes together with his illustrations, and I sort of like go over it, and I look at all the stuff he put there, and I add all the interactivity to it. So Sylvain put this cute little reptile here, and then I will add like something that triggers the sound, something that triggers that, in this case, the tail, the tongue like flaps out. I will add another event, which is that the till will also go back in. And then what we will also have to do together is that Sylvain and I would then go into some sort of like custom-made recording studio I made at home and record the sound for this specific sound, or specific thing. And I don't know if there's any sound here. Yeah, great. Let's not put it too loud. So all the sounds in the game are mouth sounds. That means that we made the sounds with our mouths. So there's that very specific, simple animation. But knowing like how many steps we had to go through to make this very one specific thing, drawing, sprite sheeting, import settings, scripts, placing, layering, all that stuff. Now knowing that, let me show you some of the scenes that we've been making. Specifically this one, this is just completely insane. Because the scene like the one you just saw will probably take us maybe 2 days to put together. Now we also have other scenes that are way, way bigger, which if you play them, it will sometimes feel like there's just no end to it. And let's see if we can make that happen. Yeah, it's a little bit pixely, but let's just say it never ends. And like I said, every single object in this scene is manually placed. Colliders were manually added, sounds were manually added, every interactive component was added manually. All the interactions, all the systems, it's a lot of work. This is armless Ayaz. So yeah, that's sort of like on a high level how we spent 3 years trying to make this game. Now I want to say a couple things about. I want to slowly dive into a little bit more, get a little bit more technical, just a little bit more, and then dive back out of that again, because I built a lot of systems for this. First of all, like I said earlier, Sylvain, he places all these things and then he has to like sort them. That system, the sorting system, is tremendously simple. But because it's so simple, it's also a lot of work. I wrote a bunch of tools that simply integrate with Unity. Actually, it just sort of uses or abuses the menu items, because what I do is this whole thing. If you put a object in the game like this, say we put one here. There we go. As you can see, the sorting is completely off now. You can press 3 buttons, A, S, or D. S will sort it to the height. Now, that's maybe a slightly weird concept, but as you can see here, everything lower in the screen should be in front, and everything higher in the screen should be behind. So if you hit S, it will sort of like try to figure out where in the screen, where in the level actually it is, and sort based on that. Usually this doesn't work very well if things go higher. And right now I want to put a box onto another box. So that's where A and D come in, where A will pull something forward, boop, and D will push it backward. So this is all relatively simple, and with this simple system we were able to create complex scenes like this. And there's in essence there's not really much more to it. So that's sort of like the sorting system that I wrote. Another thing that was really important to the game is sort of like search and replace tools, because as you can see while I'm scrolling through this, it just never ends. And there's also like no structure to it, because it would literally be no use to try to structure. How many objects are this? Let's count them. This one. There are 20,000 objects in this scene. There's no way to sort or sort of like structure these objects in a way that you would be able to get a sort of overview of this. So we just decided not to at all. But what I did make was this very simple tool, which allows you to, if you, for instance, select this pond in this case, you can say, help me select all the sprites that that all the images that have this very specific same sprite. And then what you can do is, maybe change something for all the ponds at the same time. And let's say we don't want there to be a trigger on there, you can remove or detract from the selection. And what you can even do is, if there's one object that you really like, you can save this, and then you can select, make some changes, select all of them, and then replace every other instance of it in the world. So there's like a couple of tools that helped us be able to deal with 20,000 objects in one scene. And I thought that was really important to mention here, because all these tools were just very practical needs that we had. If we didn't have these tools, we were not able to make the game at all. But what's also important is that I did not make any tools that we didn't need. I'm a game designer. I like programming. I like making tools, but I never got lost into making my own framework or any of that shit. It was just like the practical, very essential things that I made and nothing more. Please take a lesson out of this. I know there's a lot of programmers that like to make tools, but I think if I would have lost myself into making tools, this game would still not be out at this point. Even now, looking at the simple sorting system I made, I was talking to some other programmers and they told me better ways to do it. And I was like, oh shit, I should have done that. But if I would have gone back and changed everything, that would also cost a lot more time. And you know what? This works fine, so why not just go for this, right? And that's sort of like the attitude we've been having into the game, and that's why the sounds are mouse sounds, because they work fine. So why not just continue focusing on all the other things? So that's sort of like the recurring theme in the game. When things work fine, just continue making something else. Okay, so that's a little bit about. Sort of how this is manageable. Is there any other stuff in here? Yeah, I guess maybe what's cool to see, I don't know, maybe it's fun for some of you to see, but everything in the game works with triggers if you want something to be interactive. And so there's like one manager that checks whether you click on something, and then when it's on a collider, it might trigger something. That's essentially what it does. And it's also a component-based system, so one object can have one trigger or 10 triggers or no triggers. And if you don't click on a trigger, then it will just give a generic poof. So yeah, that's the generic poof. That's a trigger. That's a trigger slider with also a trigger sound thing to make that sound. Let's see. These are triggers for sounds, just for sounds. None of the characters have triggers because there's, I think, 5,000 characters in this scene. Would have been too many triggers. Here's a trigger slider. Here's like a car that gets to move based on that. Here's another slider that brings this character in front. So essentially, in terms of like technically, it's an extremely simple game. And it was always like that, and we didn't try to make it any harder than what you're seeing here. It does mean that it's a lot of work. But maybe I should say why, because this might be a question that some of you have in your mind. Why not make it procedural, right? Why not just make something that all these areas sort of generate themselves? And I tried for maybe a month, and I looked into how can I make these cute little worlds that Sylvain draws. How can I make rules and algorithms to construct a similar world? And the bottom line was, it is more work to make a specific area like this with procedural generation through code than it is to actually place it. So probably it would have taken me way more many years to be able to make all the extremely beautiful, unique situations that Sylvain can actually put together by hand. This area took 3 weeks. 3 full weeks of Sylvain sitting down and placing all these little details, it's also super worth it, because holy shit, every little corner in this area has like these little stories to tell, and it's really beautiful. One of my favorite parts here is a where is that? Let me see. Oh yeah, here it is. There's like a bunch of bananas, and they go to this monkey who's in a crate. It's great. Okay, monkey's in a crate. So yeah, that's a little bit about the technical sides of things. Now, because there's so much to do, and it's really hard to see what has to happen here, also in terms of like interactions and such. Of course, we don't just blindly go into the game. We use very boring software called Trello. Maybe you've heard of it. To determine what we're going to do, and how and who does it, and when we do it. So here you have the very current version of our Trello. This is something that me and one other guy, who I asked to help me for this specific game, occasionally have done in the last. Actually, we did it yesterday. This is what I will be working on next. Trello is. Who uses Trello here? Nearly everyone. Well, isn't it fun to see someone else's Trello board? I mean, I don't know. It makes me weirdly excited to show you my Trello board. Yeah, so there's like all sorts of stuff in here. I don't know, like Android is almost done, but it needs some implementation, some buttons and shit, and I need to do this. Do you guys know about the shortcuts in Trello? They're wonderful. If you hit Q, it will filter to all the things that you're assigned to. Amazing, right? This makes things bearable. Like, okay, now I have an overview. And so now I can prioritize all this stuff that's done. Who cares, you know? So we're going to just put this here live. Ah, shitty. That's the horrible part about Trello. Sometimes it doesn't work. Okay, so this is very important to us. And both Sylvain and I, the two sort of full-time makers on this game, continue to work and continue to go back and forth to Trello throughout the day, all the time. And every little thing, the tiniest detail, we put in Trello and we prioritize it, so that every morning when you wake up and you decide, let's work on hidden folks, that you sort of like open up Trello and the first thing at the top of the list is the thing you should totally be working on. That's the idea of Trello, and it only works if you really do it that way, if you prioritize and put all those little tasks in Trello. At least that's sort of like how we do it. And it works really well for us. We also add tasks for each other, and we write comments. We put screenshots in Trello. Lots of fun stuff. Now, Trello is not the only place where we communicate to each other what we want each other to do, because there's also Slack. Who here uses Slack? Okay, also pretty much everyone. I'm also going to show you my Slack. Equally fun. Okay, so there's this Slack. It used the game work in progress style used to be miniature, so that's why it's called like that. And look, have fun at GDC. He said it just now. This is like, when was it? What time is it? Like an hour and 50 minutes ago, he said this. Wonderful guy, Sylvain. But yeah, here's where we share like our progress, where we share all the cool stuff that we make, and where we talk about like what to do, how should we do it. Aaron and I were working on like a snowball throwing character, which is hilarious. We put this guy. We're gonna put this guy in the game with. Yeah, no, I'm not going to show you the entire game right now. We're working on a snow theme, if you hadn't figured that out yet. And yeah, this is like a wonderful thing to have Slack and really motivate each other. You guys all know this. Integrations with Slack are also awesome. So, you know, having Trello, seeing that there is progress is very motivating. It's really as simple as that. Seeing that someone else is doing something or has finished something, has put something on Git or SVN. It's very motivating. Seeing someone, you know, archive that Trello card. Yeah, woo! You know, that's sort of like the vibe you want to have within your team. And so this is a very big part of our sort of team dynamics. And as a matter of fact, Sylvain and I, we don't share an office, so we both work from home or a co-working space. And so this is also one of the few ways I actually talk to Sylvain. Most of the time, maybe we meet once a month, maybe sometimes even once every 2 months, and that's because we do talk on Slack all the fucking time, you know. We've just really found our way in communicating through Slack. So that's cool. What am I going to say next, huh? Okay, so Sylvain and I, as you can see, as he's the illustrator and me as the programmer / interaction person, we're not the only ones really working on this game. There's a couple of other people. There's an additional programmer that helps occasionally. There's someone that helps with the trailers, because holy shit, making trailers is hard and like lots of work. And it's also probably your best marketing thing. Having said that, let's look at some trailer. It's gonna be great. Okay, here we go.
Oh.
Yeah, so thank you. A trailer like this doesn't just happen. I want to make that clear. This was made by Meerte van Brugge, which is a filmmaker from the Netherlands, whom I had asked to help me with this, and she spent probably 2 or 3 full weeks on this, just from the video editing perspective. And I also spent probably a whole week on it, preparing the little scenarios, adding the sounds, making sure that she was able to film it correctly. And so it's a lot of work to make a good trailer. Anyway, that was sort of like a side track here. Let's talk about the audio, right? Because you've all understood that audio is a big part of this game. And the way it came together was very simple. I used to do a lot of game jams, and in game jams there's not a lot of time to scour free sound for the perfect sounds. I know you've all done it. We're all still doing it. But at some point I just knew what I wanted, and I thought, you know what, I can do this. I can make my own sounds. And I grabbed someone's microphone and I started yelling into a microphone, and it turned out to be quite fun. As a matter of fact, one specific game jam where I did this sort of like for fun and being like, you know, the audio jury doesn't have to listen, it's not serious. And then like the audio person sort of walked away, and then he came back at the very end saying, I have time left, just let me hear. And I won the audio awards. That was just sort of like blew my mind. And that really inspired me to put some placeholders in Hidden Folks. And when we saw it in the game, it just clicked. And we decided there and then, let's just leave it in. Why not? It works. Let's move on to the next thing, right? I've said this before. So I just want to give you a little impression, because last week we had another session to record some. We had another session to record some sounds for the snow area, and this is my office in my house, which I fluffed entirely. Meaning I put everything I have into this little cubicle, which is I sleep on that mattress. That's my mattress. And that's my computer. And I put in the middle a giant microphone. And that's how we make sounds. It's wonderful. Okay, so to give you an idea of how dumb this actually is. There's more. There's more. So because it's a snow area, there needs to be a lot of reverb. There cannot be any reverb. That's why all the fluff is there. But sometimes there would also be characters with their heads inside snow. And so in this case, Sylvain is yelling inside a cushion, because that is totally a simulation of how it sounds when you're inside snow. Anyway, you can imagine how much fun we have making this shit, and it's wonderful. What happens to that is that we have these giant recordings, and then we just throw all those hundreds of thousands of sounds in Unity, and then we just use them. It's really plain simple. Let's listen to a couple of them. My favorite ones are definitely the crocodiles. Definitely the crocodiles. Wait, where is the crocodiles? Oh, there's too many sounds. Maybe it has a different name. Oh God, chicken. These. It's really fun. Once you understand like how that you just need to go all out on this. There's just no way back. We are beyond fart. There's fart sounds. Fault. I don't even know what this is. Okay. Yeah. There's lots of sounds. Let me find a good one. Horn. What is horns? Yeah, we use those sounds for an orchestra in the factory, where the cars would have different sounds, and there's one character you have to find, which is the director, and he's doing this, and if you tap on the cars, they make all kinds of funny sounds. Oh yeah, klaxon, that's really good. That's all the cars. More cars. There's more. This one is so annoying. It's wonderful. Meep, meep. Bloop, 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 bloop. Yeah, anyway. So sound is very wonderful. So we make all these samples. Now, the next thing we do is hire a guy to help us with ambient sounds, because actually all the sounds you heard so far are sounds that are wonderful if you have if you put an interaction, right? If you trigger them. But there's also other sounds in the game that sort of give you a sense of the ambient, the feeling of the area. And we felt we were not able to make a nice ambient with the sounds. We just didn't know how. And we also just wanted someone to help us with that. So if we just listen. So there's a wind. There's like the occasional monkey. There's like very far, there's a couple of monkeys. There's like other weird sounds. I have absolutely no idea what they are. But it gives the feeling of a jungle, and that's the whole point. And not only that, oh God. Not only that, I'm gonna spoil this level for you. Like a banana. The cool thing is that I also built tools again, because we really needed them, so we could sort of fade between these ambient systems. So here, again, you hear a lot of monkeys, because this is the monkey area. So, a lot of monkeys here. But then you go here and you hear the beautiful streams. And it's really simple. There's just a bunch of ambient sources throughout the game, and they play based on the distance. It's really that simple. There's even a waterfall here. You hear that, right? It's pretty cool. Anyway, pretty simple stuff. Again, all mouse sounds, really fun to do. We just had a blast. So I think you can see how much work this is. And while making the game, I think, so this is maybe a little bit a step away from the screen. While making the game, we made one big mistake. And I can show you this mistake very easily. So I'm going to do something very scary, which is show you the estimated times that we worked on Hidden Folks. This is a pretty cool sheet. So this sheet shows me how many hours we worked per month based on the commit history and based on how busy we were, sort of like an estimate of how many hours per day we worked on each commit. And so here we can see the Hidden Folks started in November 2014, where we put a couple of hours in, both of us. I put in maybe a week of time, and Sylvain maybe just a couple days. And then, this was when we started, and we're very excited, and we're thinking about how we're going to make this game, what's it going to be. And then after February, you see a giant gap, because we worked 0 hours on this game between February and May. What happened here? Well, I decided I wanted to make this a freemium game, a free-to-play game. That's what happened. And knowing some of you, who here creates free-to-play games? It's not easy, is it? It's a lot of work. Yeah. And so I wanted to do this, and I realized it was so much work that I wasn't looking forward to making the game anymore. And it took us a long time, a couple months, to realize this, to realize that we did not feel motivated because of the giant mountain of work that was ahead of us, And so in May, we decided, you know what? Fuck it. We're going to make the smallest game we can make, the smallest, very smallest game we can make out of this first. And then we're going to see where we're going to go with this. And so that's what we did. And then slowly but surely, we started working on it more. There's actually another gap I forgot. Oh yeah, that was because... oh yeah, the other gap. I could tell you about the other gap. The other gap, which is between July and November, was a gap that happened where Sylvain and I had a little bit of a struggle. Because the thing was, we had announced the game, I think somewhere in either February or June, announced that we were working on this game. And because of that, a lot of people came to me asking, hey, we like Sylvain's art style. Can't he make a drawing for us? And that's great. I really wanted him to have that. But after 5 times with my marketing, giving him assignments and not earning any money on it, I felt a little bit like it was hard on me, He wouldn't have had those assignments without my help. He wouldn't have made all that money. And so I felt like there should have been a part of that for me as well. Now, there's a lot of weird moral, ethical decisions to be had, which I'll not discuss here. But eventually, I came back to that, and I said, you know what? Everything that people want people want from you, they want from you, and not from us. And so I will not be involved in any of that anymore. And that really motivated us. Look at this, a lot of hours in November again. And so there were these bumps that happened that we just really had to overcome. From this moment on, we started working pretty hard on the game. Some months less hard on other months. It was basically a part-time job for both of us, where we did other things in the meantime, such as he did more illustration work. I did a lot of... I actually also did another game at the same time. And so there was a lot of stuff that happened. Yeah. Okay. So... game development is going well. We're putting in a lot of hours, a lot of days, and we're showing the game at a lot of events. I have cool pictures of that. I should show you the pictures. For instance, PAX East, by far my favorite show. You know why this is my favorite show, PAX East? PAX East is my favorite show because there's barely any AAA, which means that every attendee that goes there likes indie games and will want to play your game because he's looking for more. So that's great. 80,000 people that are interested in your game. That's a pretty good premise. But there's something even cooler. If you're, for instance, part of the Indie Mega Booth, which is a great curated little subsection of PAX East, Indie Mega Booth draws in a lot of platform holders. So say Apple or Google or Valve or Sony or Microsoft or Nintendo. And the cool thing is, and this really differentiates it for me from GDC, is because here at PAX East, there's only like maybe 500 developers, right? There's only 500. At GDC, there's 30,000 game developers. So here at PAX East, only 500 people want to talk to Apple, Google, Sony, etc. So it's very easy to get in touch with these people. It's super easy. You see, they even walk through like the whole thing and you say, hey, you're Apple, hey, cool, hi, I'm Adriaan, I'm making a video game, it's really rad. Like that's the sort of interaction you can have at PAX East. At GDC, all those Apple, Google, Sony people, they'll sit in hotel rooms on their ass for the entire day, hearing pitches for the entire day. If they walk through the expo, they are not looking forward to hear about your amazing game because they've already seen 40 other amazing games that same day. And so this is why I love PAX East so much, because there's so many awesome people that are interested in your game, and it's also very good for business, actually. So if you have any chance to go to PAX East, highly recommend it. It was also, for me, the first time I tried to even sell something, Steam keys, playable posters, which are these cool posters that Sylvain drew, that have a little like, strip of targets at the bottom you can actually find on the poster. They're great if you put them on the toilet in front of you. I still have not found the key. It's horrible. Of course, we had to make a picture if fucking Waldo is playing your game. Yeah, it's a great show. Highly recommended. We did a lot of these shows. We did a lot of playtesting. We talked to a lot of people. We gained a lot of fans. But I want to talk a little bit about playtesting, because my opinion of game design is that I know shit. I don't know anything. And what I try to do is just go with whatever I feel that's right, and then I just put it in someone else's hands, have them play it, and see whether it works or not. And more often than not, it doesn't work. And that's completely fine, because at least I can see it doesn't work. And sometimes things work surprisingly well, and then I can just ride along with those. And so playtesting has been a very big part of the game design for me, of making this game. And one really cool thing that we did was playtests, actually ask people through the internet to playtest. They would get the game for free on their computer. And we asked them, hey, here's a key, but can you also, while you're playtesting, record your screen and your voice at the same time, so that we can see what you're doing. And still, a lot of people sent us text, which we totally did not want. But we did get a lot of videos, and it's awesome. Okay, so this is a person that's playing the game. Hours of footage. So this specific video is, this is only a video for the 3rd level, right? It's already for almost 45 minutes. I have watched hours, days. I've probably watched weeks of people playing the game, just trying to figure out which specific interactions are missing, which specific interactions are hard. Do people get the clues? If you tap one of the targets at the bottom, there's a clue. Do people get it? I've watched hours and hours of footage just to try to understand whether people, even got it at all. And so this was a very big part of the design for me. And of course, it was also really fun to engage with people who, engage is a stupid marketing word for talk. To talk to people who are interested in your game, who could become fans. And that, maybe later on can be sort of like your community managers. They know the game, they talk to me. Let's kill this. They know the game, they talk to me, and maybe later on they will tell other people it's awesome as well. So there's that. I think I need to start talking a little bit quicker, or go through these subjects more, because I have so much more practical tools. Okay. So iterating, prototyping, playtesting, that was really fun. Important to that also is that we have a document here, it's called Hidden Folks Emails, in which we made every template, every email that can be a template, we wrote that just once so that we had it. Of course, we did edit it a little bit, but this was just super handy for if we wanted to get email to press. We made similar emails for playtesting. Because there were a lot of weird cases we also made a lot of emails for localization. And here's a really cool thing. Hidden Folks was completely localized by 220 people. Holy shit. Entirely by the community. Entirely by the community. And I even said, I said something funny here. Wait, what is, oh yeah. Fun thing, tomorrow I'll be giving a talk, showing me your old Discord. Oh yeah, so one guy sent a photo of a cat. They all wanted you to vote for Hidden Folks at the Game Awards. They wanted me to show you this channel, I don't know, it's this silly community shit, you know. Discord is a wonderful platform in which I directly talk to fans, and there's like an active group of people on here that I talk to on a daily basis, not just about translating the game, but also about, you know, all the news. Talk about, in this case, Android, for instance, is a big subject right now. What the hell? Play Hidden Folks, not Waldo. Okay. So they helped me playtesting, etc. And this is just a really wonderful way of just talking to these people. And it's really, really simple to set up. So highly recommend this. About the translating, there's something else really cool about this. I'm so excited about this. If you want to be a translator, I send you a build of the game that is able to download this spreadsheet into the game and live, real time, change the text in the game. So if you're translating to, I don't know, Arabic, for instance, just to name one language, which is also happens to be the hardest language. If you're translating to Arabic, you go into the game, you see, oh, this text is not translated. You put it in this sheet, and they press a button in the game, and poof, the text is there. And this made it really fun for them to actually like go through the game and change some text. And this is why 220 people were so excited about translating this game. It's a lot of text. Holy shit. But it was really fun. And they were also, you know, a lot of the English jokes did not translate very well. And so they would have to talk to me, ask me, hey, is it okay if I make this kind of joke? And some other person said, hey, is it okay if I rename all these characters to my children or like someone else? There were lots of like weird, funny edge cases, which is completely fine, you know, it works. So, you know, if you want to translate, sure, name all the characters after your 26 children. Okay, so I need to really rush this now. Progress in the game is going fine. At some point we realized, shit, we're not going to be able to make everything we want. So we cut half of the game out of it. That was a painful moment, like a month before release. But it was very necessary. But instead of saying, oh, damn it, this is such a big loss, we actually took it as an opportunity, because when the new content, when you would arrive at the content you were not yet at, it would give a newsletter subscription thingy. Yeah, and it totally worked. Look at this. How many people still 5 minutes ago? Like while I was giving this talk, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people signed up. That's crazy, right? It's so bizarre that a lot of people who like your game, when you say, hey, this is the end, we hope you've enjoyed it. If you want to hear more about when new areas are coming out, it's amazing how many people would actually subscribe for a newsletter. And yeah, we've sent a lot of emails now. Very strange statistic. As you can see, the newsletter has been growing, about doubling every time I send an email, but the amount of opens is always 44%, always, and the amount of clicks is always around 500 and like between 510 and 540. What the hell? Very strange. But these emails, they look like this. They're very sort of like minimalistic, if that's sort of like how I usually put it. There's lots of pretty art. Just 2 sentences, then like all the actionable buttons, and then a little bit more beautiful fluff with a little bit extra on the end. So this is like the sort of emails that we send to people. Yeah, okay, now let's dive into some other beef. We're gonna open up my email. It's great. Okay, this thing can go, delete. I use inbox 0, which means emails either get replied to, deleted, or archived straight away, immediately. I just want nothing in my inbox. It's a little bit of an OCD. Okay, what I want to show you is while we were making the game, I am also talking to my contacts at Apple, at Google, at Valve. I'm very privileged. I've already made a lot of games. Some of them were relatively successful. Some of them had a lot of critical acclaim, which means a lot of people from the industry really liked it. This helps me to get in touch with Apple and Google and such. If you're not in the same sort of vibe, it's very hard. I'm sorry. I don't know what to do about it. Go to events like this. Go to bigger events, international events, where you might be able to stumble upon these people. But once you do, you can send them emails and they will respond to you. It's wonderful. And I've also found that they will only respond if you actually get to meet them in real life. If you've never seen them in real life, it's very unlikely that they'll actually respond. So here I was saying that we were going to have a content update on Hinfolks. This was 5 days ago, and 4 days ago I said I can do December 7th, but if we can do it, it might physically destroy me. Is the 14th also an option? Anyway, this is great to have an actual conversation with platform holders. Think about Google, think about Apple, think about Sony, etc. So I totally do this a lot. We also implement all the features they want. That's sort of how it works. You could say it's disgusting, but having haptic feedback in the game makes it slightly better, but also makes my Apple contact really happy. And so that's like great business, you know, that we try to do. We both like give and get a little bit. And then there's Android, which I completely fucked up. Google Play right now only cares about simultaneous shipping, which means if you don't release it at the same time as iOS, they will not feature you, period. That's like when conversation stops with them. So, too bad. I will just never be featured on Android, and that's completely fine. Okay, marketing. I want to talk about marketing. Let's see if there's something I haven't mentioned here, because I am going to rush through things just to show you all the stuff. Almost. So you guys know TweetDeck. It's super wonderful, TweetDeck. It's like Twitter, but like bringing everything at the same time. Hey, look, someone just tweeted this. Who was it? But the thing you can have in TweetDeck also is have these columns where it searches for something and it just refreshes automatically. So I have a search for Hinfolks. I know every word that people say on Hinfolks on Twitter. Every tweet I see, and I can like them. I can respond to fans or people who hate it. I say, well, fuck you too. It's wonderful. So check out TweetDeck. I showed you Sandy, the email program I use. Something I used to get key requests, make sure that all the press gets keys, is Do Distribute, made by Rami Ismail from Vlambeer. Wonderful thing. The press goes to a link. They say, hey, this game, I want this game. And then a little pling pops up on my screen saying, oh, this guy from The Verge wants your game. And I say, okay, click, and they get the game. They get like a code or an iOS promo code or a key, etc. Okay, yes. So using all this with trailers and emails and whatnot, I send an Out Now release. I announced the game on Steam. Oh God, we haven't shown the Steam things. Oh my God, it took so long. So we announced the game on Steam. Is there news? Yeah, lots of. So you guys have you guys heard of Steam? There's like announcements, things. It's wonderful. Lots of people go there and they like things, and I don't really understand. They comment as well, saying that they want more. We want more. And then there's release day, and then holy shit. And honestly, I barely remember a thing from release day. It was just so much. Oh, here comes another tool. Promoter app. Have you guys heard of Promoter? It's really great. It's Promoter. What Promoter does is it scans every website that talks about video games, and it tells you if there's an article on it. Super handy. So, for instance, this was around the release. Let's go to release. Look at this, release day, first day press release. Isn't that crazy? So this is a very handy website. But the coolest thing, this is also a resource, because if you go to Promoter and you click on Sites, it will show you every game that talks about video games. Super helpful, super handy. So you can just, you can sort by Twitter followers. You can say, I just want these and these countries. It needs to be iOS and Mac. Apply, and it will just literally show you the list of the best websites to contact, or the ones that you have to put most effort in, because if you get one article in the New York Times, it's going to get hundreds of thousands more than NeoJeff, for instance, right? So this is a good list to go through and then to check for which journalists to actually to go to. So handy resource. Again, like I said, barely remember anything from the launch, but it went super well. Like I said before, Steam did amazing for hidden folks. iOS did amazing. We get 98% of the user reviews are positive. It's been insane. And so I'm now going to end. I'm going to end with showing you my sales figures. People usually don't do this. This is scary stuff for me. Okay, please don't share this with anyone. But yeah, hidden folks makes seriously good money, and it's interesting how it works. But I also want to put it in perspective, because we've been working on this for 3 years, right? This is an insane number to me, insane. But you have to understand that while this does end eventually, I have to share this with Sylvain and some other collaborators. First of all, I share it. Second of all, if you live in the Netherlands, you pay 50% tax. So it's, again, decreased by half. And then you end up with an amount that is just enough to spend 5 years. So if you incorporate the costs I've made over the last 3 years making this game, I now have 2 more years to make sort of like a new game based on this, which is privileged and awesome, and holy shit, I'm super glad. But numbers like this are needed if you want to be a sustainable game developer, which makes me really sad. And I'll explain to you why very quickly. You see these peaks? This is launch on iOS. It's almost entirely due to featuring. Because I did my business well with Apple. I seriously thought Steam was not going to do so well, and it did amazingly well, especially reviews. If you go to Steam and you sort all products by reviews, Hidden Folks is on the first page, which is insane. And so I literally emailed my contact, which I just had met once by accident, saying, hey, Hidden Folks, best rated game of Steam. Wait, what? And I said, anyway, how do I get one of those images that, I literally said, hey, how do I get one of those images if you open Steam and there's this news image? How do I get one? And he was like, oh, yeah, we'll arrange one. I was like, oh, yeah, awesome. And then we did. Look at this. Whoa! So it's completely crazy, right? How did this happen? I have no idea. And so what's happening here is iPhone, the new iOS launches, again, like good business with Apple. So, looking at this and reflecting on this, business is very important for me to be sustainable. I can make a funny, weird, shitty game, take 3 years, but without talking to Apple and Google, and without talking to Valve and without talking to Sony, it's very hard to make these kinds of spikes. I'm just by myself, My marketing reach isn't that very big. While I'm also making the game, I need to do marketing and business. So if there's one thing no, actually, don't just learn one thing. I hope there were actually a lot of things in my talk that might have proven useful to you, and I hope that you will also be able to sustain yourself making video games. If you have any questions, come to me afterwards, okay? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Adriaan.